Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. I'm Charlotte Fereday. In this show, we shine a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what gets them going, growing, and what they think about the future of the industry is going to look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Natalie Ledward, Head of Vulnerability, Access and Inclusion at Monzo. How are you doing, Natalie?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
So, in today's show, we're going to talk about Natalie's career, take a mini deep dive into the importance of inclusive design. This is a topic close to our hearts at 11FS. We've been building a bit of a catalogue of podcasts and blog articles recently. And we've recently released a report called Inclusive Design, Building Financial Services for Everyone. Today, we wanted to extend that conversation, so let's dive in. So Natalie, for anybody in the universe that might be unfamiliar, can you give us a 1-minute pitch for Monzo?
Absolutely, I can. Okay, so we are the bank that lives on your phone, and we're on a mission to make money work for everyone. We're trying to transform the traditional ways of money management with tech, and we're trying to co-create with our customers to deliver products and tools that put them in control of their finances. We were founded to disrupt an industry, to challenge everything about it. We've got industry first people policies and like a values driven culture. I'm really proud to say we're now the UK's largest digital bank with over 6 million customers. And we were also named Best British Bank in May this year. So hopefully that's a good little 1-minute pitch for you.
That's a great pitch. And can you tell us a little bit about what your role is at Monzo, kind of day to day?
Of course I can. So I'm responsible for 4 distinct but overlapping areas at Monzo. Those are vulnerability, accessibility, inclusion, and bereavements. My role focuses on our strategy and intent in those areas, so the big ideas. And then teams of brilliant people who are much smarter than me across the business make those ideas reality. I wear lots of hats throughout the day. I get involved in some really exciting projects at Monzo, and I work closely with our customer operations team, risk and compliance teams, product, engineering, data, user research, you name it. I also try and work as closely as possible with Kirsten, who is our wonderful Director of Diversity and Inclusion, to really align what she's trying to do for our people, our team at Monzo, with what we're doing for customers.
Awesome. And I guess you may not know the answer to this, but to what extent do you think Monzo's approach to inclusion, vulnerability and accessibility is different to your competitors?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the key is that values-driven culture that I mentioned, and the company mission. Honestly, that makes my job easier. I think it makes us quite unique. Having a mission like make money work for everyone does summarize genuinely what everyone at Monzo is trying to do. We really live and breathe it. So that would be my answer, I think.
Okay. Getting into a little bit more detail about inclusive design, and I think so. I've got quite a specific definition of what that means to me, and it'd be really interesting to hear what inclusive design means for you personally, and also at Monzo.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So we try and think about inclusivity right at the start, first and foremost at Monzo. It's not an afterthought. It's embedded in everything that we do. Like I said, our culture, our mission, everything that we create. That being said, there's always work to do. We don't always get it right. So I think, listening to our customers and our team's feedback, and I suppose really trying to create safe spaces, channels for them to share their experience is equally important. But that's kind of how I would say we address it.
And I know this is going off piece slightly, but it's super interested in those safe spaces and those channels that you've kind of created.
Yeah.
I guess, how do you go about that? What can you tell me a bit more about what a safe space might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm talking about safe spaces at Monzo, there's kind of two approaches to this. So we have the one that we've set up for our customers, which is a tool that we've built into our app called Share With Us. And that's really a way for our customers to let us know their circumstances if they're, in a situation where they're struggling to access something or they're kind of struggling with the finances. The reason why it's safe is because it's traceless in the app, so it doesn't leave any kind of log, which means it's really great for situations that you want to be more discreet in, like situations of abuse, for example. So I suppose for customers, that's where I'm kind of focusing. But for our people, in terms of creating safe spaces, we have Slack, which is obviously a great way it's a great communication tool, right? That a lot of businesses use, and we use that to create safe spaces. So we have channels. That are kind of private and locked down, to create that safe space for people to be honest, and in I suppose, a group that they identify with. We also have public channels on various issues, various topics that raise awareness, and people use their voices to kind of share their experience in those public channels. So I think when I say safe spaces, that's kind of the two angles that I'm coming from.
Okay. So when we were writing our inclusive design report, one of the things we included were what we were calling trailblazers. So we looked around for examples of people in financial services who are doing inclusive design really well. And actually it was pretty difficult to find people across all of the different dimensions of inclusive design that we were thinking about. So thinking about mental well-being, different types of belonging, neurodiversity. Be really interesting to hear how you feel about why more financial services companies aren't doing it or aren't doing it well.
So a really good question. So I actually think there are so many good individuals, real champions of inclusion in fintech, in financial services right now, who are absolutely addressing inclusivity, but to do it at scale is a very different thing. And I think that's a culture thing, honestly. If it's not part of your firm's culture, it probably doesn't get very far up the list when it's competing with other business priorities. So yeah, I think it's a challenging thing to address when it's not part of a culture.
And I know that it's a big ask, but how do you change that culture? What things can you put in place? Or do you think if it's not baked in from the beginning, does that mean it's never going to get there?
Okay, I think there's only two things that really quickly drive real change at scale in this industry, and that is disruption and regulation. We've seen in the last few years how industry disruptors or challengers can innovate and bring the whole industry along with them because it really raises consumer expectation. So up until not too long ago, something that I know we take for granted at Monzo, like instant payment notifications, that was completely new. I'm also personally really grateful, really excited to see the FCA's consumer duty arrive. In my eyes, it's regulation about doing the right thing for consumers, being inclusive, and it's forcing a lot of firms to rethink about how they approach the customer journey, how they approach foreseeable harm, something that the Equality Act has long expected of us, but with its reference to anticipatory duty. But I think it really brings that to life in consumer duty. So yeah, disruptors and regulation would be my short answer.
And do you think the latest regulations go far enough? Are they, or not necessarily far enough, but do they go in the right direction?
Yeah, I was going to answer your first question. Is that no, they don't go far enough. Yes, in the right direction. I think it's the natural next step, isn't it? Like we've seen, the guidance for vulnerability that came out last year. We kind of have had a sense of where this is going for a while, and I think the direction is the right one, but there's so much more to do.
Yeah, definitely. I've got quite a specific question now, and this is partly based on the work that you did a couple of months ago around ADHD. But I guess, are there ways that other kind of, how do I call them, more traditional maybe financial services companies or even fintechs can sort of more support people with a range of neurodiverse conditions?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, short answer. I think we're learning more and more about the barriers that are up in everyday life for people who are neurodivergent. You said it yourself, we've been working on our own support for customers and colleagues living with ADHD. We know that we're not perfect either, but we do provide a lot of, features that help, tools that help. We recently commissioned this research that demonstrated, a financial cost, like an ADHD sort of tax of those barriers on people. So no, I don't think the traditional approach does cater for people who are neurodivergent, but I think, inclusive design definitely does.
So one of the things we've been trying to do with all of the kind of inclusive design report and the activity we've been doing around it is to make it super actionable for people, to give them quite practical things that they could try in their organisations. Have you got any tips that you could give people who wanted to design more inclusive products for neurodivergent people?
Yeah, I mean, you can start quite small with this. Like we have a company value at Monzo. Think big, start small. I think that notion works really well here. I think, thinking about this question for firms can be quite a daunting one. But if you just think of the impact, the big impacts that you can have with some small tweaks, you can be really smart about it. So, if we're thinking of practical actions, the very first thing that I would do is speak to people, honestly. Speak to your team, speak to your customers, understand their experience around your product, your service, their experience of working for you. That would always be my starting point, to be honest, is involving people. But there are small things that, we've changed at Monzo, things that we plan to change, and kind of is an ongoing process that they're not big things, but they do make a difference. So things like, tweaking your target market templates, your change process, like making sure that there's a question that makes people think in there, mapping one customer journey that is a bit problematic, you think it could be better, sharing what you find in that mapping. I think a lot of work can be done with quite a small effort.
I really like that idea of starting with just like one small thing, and then you have a kind of the ripple out effect of that.
Exactly.
One of the things that I've heard when I've spoken to people about inclusive design over the years is that, oh, well, we can't do that in my organisation because it would take too long to do the extra research, or it would cost more. Do you think it's cost Monzo more to build Monzo as an inclusive bank?
No. No is my short answer. Designing an inclusive product earns you more, right? Like, lots of people listening to this will be familiar with the purple pound. That's just one example of why designing inclusively has that commercial advantage. And I don't think we should shy away from it, honestly. What I think can cost more is retrospectively thinking about inclusivity. Obviously, the later you leave considerations in the design journey for inclusion, the more costly it can be to address later. So the earlier, the better. But, that being said, it's never too late to address inclusion. I just listed a bunch of cost-effective, tiny ways that you can make small changes that'll have a big impact. So, no, I don't think it cost us more.
Fantastic. So it'd be good to think a little bit about what's coming, if there's anything that you can share, just around, I guess, the next couple of years in Monzo's land of what are you thinking about next?
Yeah. So in terms of Monzo, there's never a quiet moment for us. We're all very busy building a bank, but there's a few things that either are coming up or have literally just happened that I'm quite excited about. And they're not these big things either. They're just small things, but I think they're going to have a big impact. So I mentioned our recent work on ADHD, and obviously we did the research. A few weeks ago, we ran a listening session, which was like a facilitated discussion on the impact of ADHD on money management and on the workplace. So we're hoping to share the key findings of that session and our follow-up actions very soon. So that's the first thing that, I'm most excited about. We've also been working with another honestly brilliant organisation called Surviving Economic Abuse for quite a few years. And this week, this literally just happened this week, we've launched a pilot of something called the Economic Abuse Evidence Form. So what that is, it's in partnership with Surviving Economic Abuse, and it supports victim survivors who may have been coerced into taking out borrowing with Monzo. The form's completed by the customer with the support of an authorised third party, and then it's sent to us for review, and we can take appropriate action then on the account. The benefit of this, what this does, and it might not sound that exciting, but it reduces the need for customers to repeat the story. So it acts as like, not that they should need it, but like a verification that they've experienced economic abuse, which means we don't have to question that person. And if they're affected across multiple organizations, if they've got another bank that they need to speak to, it makes that conversation much easier and less upsetting. So like I said, those small things, but for people who are experiencing these situations, they have such a big impact.
That sounds awesome. I look forward to hearing about both of those. So we're coming towards the end of the show. We just wanted to finish off by asking one more question, which is, what's one thing that you would recommend to any product manager, designer, engineer that they could start doing with their products and services?
Yes. Can I say two things? They're sort of linked. It's a bit of a cheat.
You can have two things.
Thank you. Okay, so it goes back to that idea of co-creation that I mentioned at the start in my little 1-minute pitch, and I think it's been the key to our success. So my two things are: involve people and be transparent with them. Involve your teams, involve your customers, and when you're doing that, think about representation. Representation's obviously so important. It builds trust. It adds that kind of invaluable perspective. But then be transparent about where you're at on your journey towards inclusion. Wanting to include everyone and then actually including everyone is really hard. So it's okay to be on a journey with it. So those would be my two.
Amazing.
Sorry.
Thank you. So it's coming to the end of the show. Thank you, Natalie, so much for joining us. It was really awesome to hear all of that. I could talk about inclusive design all day. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're getting up to?
Yeah. Okay. For everything we're doing at Monzo, you can follow our social channels. We're on pretty much everything: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. Of course, our website as well, monzo.com. I can't always promise the most exciting updates from me personally, but you can follow me if you want on Twitter and LinkedIn. But yeah, that's where to go.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's all we've got time for this week. So make sure you follow 11FS also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok to stay up to date with all the cool stuff we're doing. And if you enjoy the show, please subscribe to the 11FS YouTube channel, where you can also catch up on previous episodes. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.